Hello Algebra 1. Today we are going to be back into our green packet. We are going back to Unit 10, so you need to find your Day 6 notes. So the way this is going to work, now that we're in our more difficult unit, is every day on your homework guide we are going to spend 2 days to do. So one day you will submit a Canvas quiz, and then the next day you'll submit the homework assignment. Okay, so we're going to start today with Day 6. And the first thing we're going to do is review factoring, which we did on Friday. So this is just when we're doing our box problems. Multiplies to 14, adds to -9, and that should be a -7 and a -2. So remember our notation here looks like FOIL. We put our parentheses super close together, and you're going to put x minus 7, x minus 2. All right, so then let's just try these next three. This next one will be multiplying to 15, adding to 8. And that should be a +5 and a +3. And as I'm saying these, I want you to think about them in your head. Don't just write down what I'm writing down. Actually think about figuring out the numbers before I say them. Okay, number 3, multiplying to -32. Adding to 4, and again you can go ahead and fill this out if you want. So I know I'm going to have a positive and a negative because I'm multiplying to a negative, and it should be 8 and 4. The 8 should be the positive one because they'll add to 4 that way. Alright, and then our last one of these, remember when you don't have an x, it's just like there's a 0x? So this is what multiplies to -49 and adds to 0, and that is 7 and -7. So that'll be x plus 7, x minus 7. Okay, so what we just did was we factored. Okay, all of this is called factored form. The original problem that I gave you, that is in your standard form. Okay, so now what we're going to do today is something different. In our last unit, we learned how to solve a quadratic equation in standard form. This was ages ago. And we used your friend quadratic formula. Okay, remember him? X equals opposite b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Yeah, that was a long time ago. Today we're going to learn how to solve a quadratic equation in factored form. Okay, so depending on what form you're in, we're going to solve it different ways. So to see how this works, we're going to solve by graphing. You do not need to type this into your calculator. You can just watch mine, but please do fill in your notes. So we're going to sketch the graph, label its x-intercepts or its zeros, whichever word you prefer, and give the solutions on the line provided. So I'm going to take my calculator. I'm going to go to y equals, clear out what I got. Everything on the left of my equal sign, I'm going to plug in y1. Okay. Notice that this is in factored form right now because it's in the parentheses. Everything to the right of the equal sign, I'm going to put in y2, so that's a 0, and I'm going to graph. All right, so I'm looking for my intersections. I'm going to go ahead and draw that. Okay, notice it's equal 0, so that means my line is right across the x-axis. And as we can see here, we actually have 2 intersection points, or 2 zeros. All right, so I'll just go ahead and do my second trace 5, enter, enter, enter. And the first one is at -2, 0. Go ahead and label that. And then we'll find our other one, second trace 5. Move the cursor over. La la la, takes forever. Ah. Okay. 5, 0. Label. And then your answers, remember, are just your x's. And so we'll put x equals -2 or 5. So that's what we did back in Unit 8, which was a long time ago. Now, what I want you to notice is when you look at your solutions, -2 and 5, you should notice some similarities from your factored form. And mainly, your solutions are the opposites, okay, or switch signs of your factored form. So this is a big deal because instead of having to do quadratic formula, which is time consuming, not difficult, but time consuming, what we can do instead is just factor a problem and then your solutions are just your opposites. Okay, so let me show you what I mean. First, so let's write down some rules for this. This idea is called the zero product property, which we are going to abbreviate as ZPP. Okay, so to solve, find our x-intercepts or solutions from factor form, we use an idea called the zero product property. Now, here's how it works, or why it works. Let's say you have a number A times a number B, and it's equal to 0. So I'm going to put if. If A times B equals 0, what must be true about one of those values? Okay. Well, one of them has to be 0, right? Because anything times 0 is 0. So if A times B equals 0, then either A equals 0 or B equals 0. And we're going to use that idea to solve these. It's not difficult at all, I promise. Okay, 2 rules for ZPP, zero product property. You must have an equal 0. Okay, it's not called the 5 product property, it's called the zero product property. You must have an equal 0 to use this property. The second rule is you must be in factored form. Okay, so again, factored form is the one that looks like FOIL. Okay, looks like FOIL. It's what we've been doing with your parentheses. Okay, so something like this. This would be factored form. Okay, the other clue that you're going to use this is you're going to use the word, or you're going to see the word solve in your directions. Solve the following equations using zero product property. The answers we get will represent your zeros or your x-intercepts of your parabola. All right, so super simple. Here's the idea. This is saying that this number times this number equals 0, and we want to solve for x. What you don't want to do is FOIL. Remember, FOIL means multiply. It doesn't say multiply up here, it says solve. So in order to solve, all you're going to do is set each part equal to 0. Okay, set each little part equal to 0, and then we solve it. So here, to solve, I add my 3 on both sides. X equals 3. Here, I subtract my 4 on both sides. I'm just solving like normal. -4. And what you should notice is that your answer is the opposite of the factor. Okay, this was -3, so my answer is +3. +4, my answer is -4. Okay, now it gets a little harder if your numbers are bigger here, or if you have a number in front of x, but the process is still the same. Take each little piece and just set it equal to 0. Okay, take each little piece and just set it equal to 0. And then we solve. So for this one, I would subtract 3 on both sides. And then I would divide by 4 on both sides. And I get -3/4 as an answer. And over here, it's +4. So I will -4 on both sides and get -4. Okay, that's it. Super simple. Again, the key word is solve. Okay, if it wanted you to FOIL, it would multiply, or it would say multiply. All right, now these 4 are a little different. You're going to notice that this one you have an x in front. So this is like its own little part as well, and you're just still going to set it equal to 0. What's nice though is that that's already solved. It's already x equals 0, so that one's done. This guy, x minus 10 equals 0. Okay, and again, it's always equal to 0 because that's why it's called the zero product property. And 2x plus 4 equals 0. And then we just solve these like normal using your inverse operations. Add your 10 over, x equals 10. Think about how you would solve this first. Don't divide by 2 first, subtract your 4 first. And then we'll divide by 2. Okay, so notice this one has 3 solutions, or 3 zeros. Now, number 4, notice there's a number out front here. We'll talk more about this next week, but look, if you do this, 3 equals 0, does that make sense? No, it does not. 3 is not equal to 0, so I'm just going to cross that out. You only need to set the parts that have x's equal to 0. So like this one, had an x, so I set it equal to 0. 3 doesn't have an x, so I can ignore it. Both of these guys have x's, so I need to set them equal to 0. Okay, and again, we'll just go ahead and solve. So minus 10, minus 10. And divide by 4, divide by 4. And then you can math rect that. It should be negative 5/2. And then this guy, it's a minus 26, so I'll add 26. Okay. All right, let's try 2 more like that. Remember, anything that has an x, we set equal to 0. So this guy will be set equal to 0. So will this guy. So will that guy. And now we just solve each equation. This guy we're going to divide by 4, but 0 divided by 4 is still 0. This guy here, we'll subtract our 3 on both sides. And then we'll divide by our 2. Okay. And this guy, we'll go ahead, we'll add our 5. And those are your 3 answers. Last one of these. People get a little worried that there's a squared here. You don't have to worry about it. Just bring down the part that has the x in it. I don't need to worry about this negative 2. It doesn't have an x. Just bring down your x plus 11 equals 0, and then you can solve it. So you'll have x equals negative 11. So that one only has one solution. So what that means is if you were to graph that parabola, it only hits your x-axis once. Okay, it only has 1 0. Okay, so next we're going to put our 2 main ideas together, both factoring and ZPP, zero product property. We're just going to spend a couple minutes on this. We're going to focus on this more tomorrow. Okay, so when there is an equals 0, this means we need to solve the equation. Okay, first we'll do our box problem, okay, or our factoring. And then we will use ZPP. Again, that stands for zero product property. We only use ZPP if there is already an equals 0. Okay, you can't go and add equals zeros into your problems. And the other keyword is the directions will always say to solve the equation. Okay, so we're gonna do these first 4, and we'll do more of this tomorrow. Okay. All right, so factor and solve, the below equations using zero product property. The first thing that you need to notice is that this is currently in standard form. So we are going to factor it first by doing our box problem, multiplies to 50, adds to 15. Those numbers are a 10 and a 5. So this starts off just like we've been doing. You're going to put your x plus 10 and your x plus 5. But now there's an equals 0 at the end. Okay, so make sure you have that equals 0. It's important. Now, since you are in factored form and you have an equals 0, now we will do what we just did on the previous page. This is the zero product property step. Set each piece equal to 0. Okay, so literally just bring down what you have, set it equal to 0, and then we solve it. Minus 10 minus 10. X equals negative 10. Minus 5 minus 5. X equals negative 5. Okay, that's it. All right, it's just the 2 steps put together. So we'll try it again. First we do our box problem, multiplies to 6, adds to -5. You're doing your factored form. Bring down your equals 0. All right, so what are those numbers that multiply to a +6 and add to a -5? They should be a -3 and a -2. Okay, so now we'll write it in factored form, x minus 3, x minus 2. That's the factoring part, okay? Now we're going to solve it. Set each piece equal to 0. And again, what we're doing right now, setting everything equal to 0, this is called the zero product property, or ZPP. Okay, and then we're just solving. So move your 3 over, move your 2 over. That's it. All right, last two, 3 and 4. Number 3, what you should notice is there isn't an equals 0. So just like we did with quad formula, we are going to need to move this -7 over. And since it's just the number or your C value, it's going to go at the end. Okay, there we go. Now once we move that 7 over, we can go ahead and factor. Okay, again, factoring is what you have with the parentheses. We are multiplying to 7. We are adding to -8. Okay, and well, this one should be not too bad because the only numbers that multiply to 7 are 7 and 1, but they're both going to be negatives. X minus 7, x minus 1. Okay, and now we factored it. Now we need to solve it. X minus 7 equals 0. X minus 1 equals 0. Okay, and a lot of people say, well, do I have to do this step? Yeah, you really should. Okay, but I can't really stop you if you don't. So what I really care about is if you can go from the factored form to telling me the answers, I'll be happy, especially over e-learning. Okay, yes, your answers are always going to be the opposites. All right, one more. Box problem first. Remember, this means what multiplies to 36 and adds to 0 because there's like a 0x in there. Okay, and those numbers are a +6 and a -6. Don't forget your equals 0. That's the factoring step. Now we solve it. Set each piece equal to 0. And I'm showing all the work that I want you to show. So these would be your two answers. Okay, but again, notice that whatever the factor form was, the answers are just the opposites. Okay, and again, those numbers represent your x-intercepts or your zeros of your parabola. Okay, so you do not have a worksheet tonight. Okay, you do not need to do worksheet 5. We're actually going to work on that together tomorrow. What you just need to do is go and do your Canvas quiz and submit that. It's just 5 questions and you are done for the day. Thanks for listening. Bye.